Gabriela, before we get started, I have to tell you, I spent the flight home from Iceland listening to your memoir After the Fall, and I knew you had an incredible entrepreneurial journey, but I wasn't prepared for just how remarkable your personal journey has been. And I think it's especially fitting that we're having this conversation while you're back home in the Czech Republic, where your story began. So, welcome to the Entrepreneur's Journey, where we talk to successful entrepreneurs about building a business that can run without them. My guest today is Gabriela Gerhart, founder and CEO of the Motherhood Center in Houston. More than 25 years ago, Gabriela saw the new and expecting parents needed more than information. They needed trusted experts, practical care, and a community to help them navigate one of life's biggest transitions. That vision became the Motherhood Center, which has helped thousands of families through pregnancy, childbirth, and early parenthood. So, Gabriela, I'm really looking forward to sharing your journey with the audience. So, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me and the very nice intro.
Thank you. So, before we get into the business, your story began in the Czech Republic. And what's it like to be back there reflecting on everything that's happened since you left? And if you can, for a moment, just shed some light on how different the Czech Republic today is than before the fall of the Iron Curtain.
Well, it's completely different. Everything from access to various food supplies to really kind of the overall mentality of people. And now, because during communism we could not even travel outside of the borders of the Czech Republic or Czechoslovakia back then, so people didn't even know what's out there. And so, of course, now post-communist. Czech Republic is very different. People are expecting service. People are expecting, access to different produce or products,
Mhm.
and that definitely, pretty soon after the revolution, it like that the market was not there, and all of a sudden it was just flooded. So it was very interesting to watch the kind of the journey Czech Republic was on.
Yeah, yeah. And what I find interesting is you were kind of forced into that by leaving and immigrating to the United States. And the market came when the revolution happened, the market came back to the Czech Republic. So you were kind of force fed it by seeing a different culture and a different ideology when you emigrated. So how did those early experiences in the communist countries shape your views on freedom, opportunity, work, and eventually starting your own business?
Growing up, growing up in communism, you don't know that there is anything else, and so you are not kind of like, oh, I wish this and that, because you just don't know that there is anything else out there. And so, as a small child or as a young woman, I was always kind of in the leadership roles, and even like the pioneer, which is kind of like the scouts, but it was really very focused on the communism. And so I was always like involved there. I was the president of my class, and I always had kind of I guess, the aspirations and desires to be kind of in the leadership roles. But it was all just kind of I guess, sheltered and manipulated in some way. And so, growing up, as far as kind of the entrepreneurship spirit, again, nobody was entrepreneur. You couldn't have a business. So that was all kind of non-existent. And even within my family, we didn't talk about things. Maybe my parents knew something, but they couldn't dare to speak in front of the children about that, because there would be a knock on the door, the next
Yeah.
day, or children say something in school. And so I was kind of growing up a little bit of a sheltered kind of as far as the information access. And but as a young child, I was always looking for ways to make money.
Ah,
So I would be like collecting paper or collecting glass, and taking it to the place where they were paying me back for that, or even like skinning rabbits. We had rabbits, and so skinning the rabbits, my dad taught me kind of how to do that properly, and so I was able to take that to the collection side and get money for that. And so those were my kind of like entrepreneurial skills or interests. But of course, I had no idea what it even means to be an entrepreneur. And so coming to America and starting a business and all of that, that was like so new and really kind of starting from ground zero essentially.
Yeah, but I love the fact that even where you had there was no culture, cultural sort of lessons. You instinctually sort of, were doing things that were entrepreneurial, not even knowing what the word was,
Yeah,
by doing those kind of activities and sort of finding ways to make money, which is
yeah.
certainly interesting. So you come over, you're an au pair, and you're doing a lot of work with newborns, and working with mothers. So, before even you started the Motherhood Center, what was happening that made you convinced that families just didn't need another service? They needed an entirely different sort of infrastructure or different model of care, and that you really created. What was it? What convinced you that families needed that?
Sure. So I guess it was kind of a combination of events, I guess I would say. So yes, coming to US, my background is I'm a pediatric nurse and physical therapist back home in Czech Republic, and so after my au pair year was over, now my husband of 27 years, he could not let me go, and so he proposed, and so we got married, and so of course because of my background, so I initially was exploring, work in this hospital or this physical therapy clinic, or expand my degree, but because of the education system was so different. Um, it was all rejections, rejections, rejections. It's like, well, you need to go back to school. Well, and I was in my early 20s. I was like, I'm not about to go to school. And for me, it would be really like from math to geography, everything to study. And so there was this kind of like, now I'm in America and what I'm going to do. And of course, my passion always been children. And through this experience working with this host family, so I was taking care of four boys. Cooper was 10 days old when I arrived, and after that, he had three other brothers, 5, 7, and 9-year-old. And I really was very exposed to the American lifestyle. I was the essentially the care provider, caregiver from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Before the parents came home, and had to do homework and care for the newborn, and kind of figure all these things out. And so I was like, wow, this is very different than my village, where if my cousin wants to go to a grocery store, she kind of essentially can drop off her baby with anybody, because everybody is kind of a family, or kind of a relative, or somebody who you can very much trust. And of course, being in Houston, back then fourth largest city, the village atmosphere was not quite there. And so when my husband and I got married, I was kind of figuring all things out, and he just happened to get a call from a friend of a friend, and basically the conversation was, we just got home from the hospital with a newborn and have no idea what to do, and we've heard that your wife does. And so he calls me and he said, "Do you want to, help them?" And I said, "Sure, I would be glad to." And so I spent, I think, a couple of weeks with that family, and mainly overnights and some daytime hours. And they called me baby nurse. So I was like, well, that's interesting, and I made, pretty good money. And I'm like, I kind of like that. And it was very natural. It was something very easy for me to do. And that family referred me to another family, another family. And that's kind of how I realized that there is a need for that type of a service. But also, what I start realizing is usually, after the assignment is over, I'm saying goodbye to the family, and usually the mom's kind of in tears. They're like, "What I'm supposed to do now?" I'm like, "Well, there's some place for you to go." And and this is 26, 27 years ago. So there was no really much of a Google searches and mommy groups, and none of that was really existent at all. And they're really the only resource for these moms were either like a nonprofit, more kind of a lower income community centers, or maybe like a hospital childbirth class. But beyond that, there was nothing else. And so I quickly realized, because of my education, my background, being able to expand the support to these moms through creating a center like the Motherhood Center would be a good idea. And so I just kind of jumped into it, and here we are.
Yeah, it's so interesting because where you came from, as you said, there was a lot of family infrastructure in place where you could find that sort of support, whereas in the U.S. it wasn't available. And then you were able to just sort of see that the need was there, and after a number of stints, you said, "Well, I'll provide this service." So the idea was compelling. You're seeing this great need. But then you have to build a business. And, again, I know you've got plenty of background in the pediatric nursing and all that sort of stuff, but building a business is different. So how'd you go from recognizing the need to actually creating a business? And what was that like, given your background with, not even with any capitalist background? I mean, it must have been, what were the early years like? Tell me.
It was for sure very interesting. I do have to credit my husband, who was very encouraging, and he's third generation Houstonian, and he was kind of like my cheerleader, and kind of guiding me, and kind of helping me answer some of the questions, especially kind of the legal structures and
Hmm.
those type of things. But yeah, I mean, first check I wrote was, my company check. First computer I, was working on, or first email I was having was my company email. And so I kind of dove in, and being in my early 20s too, I don't want to say naively, but I was just kind of, I was like hungry for, information. I was excited. Something that I wanted to kind of share to, not only learning the business, but also like learning English. I didn't speak pretty much any English when I came to US. And so, all of a sudden I'm building up curriculums, and, I'm talking to people on the phone, and, have to understand so much of the structure. So I was just kind of like a sponge, just taking it all in.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I mean, not only starting the business, but in a totally different language that you're probably only half proficient in when you're starting this. So a
oh,
real
no,
leap. Yeah.
yeah, no, like probably 10% of the language skill. Yeah. So
Wow.
that's what dictionaries were for, if you don't know the word, you kind of flip to the dictionary and learn what the word is.
Yeah, that's incredible. I'm sure very well worn. And so and then I think, you talk about the business building, and it's good you had your husband to really guide you. But, you didn't grow up of dreaming of becoming a CEO. And I'm sure there wasn't really an entrepreneurship path in Czechoslovakia at the time. But at what point did you realize that your job is no longer simply caring for mothers and babies, but building and leading an organization? When did you make the transition from sort of baby nurse to CEO?
I think it just kind of start unfolding in a way that, I start working. Of course, a lot of the assignments I would have would be overnights. And so I would be working overnight shifts, and after that, getting some sleep, and running a business. And so at one point I realized, like, I mean, obviously that's not sustainable for me to do good job at night, good job during the day. And so that was the first kind of a breaking point, that I realized that I'm not going to be able to work in the capacity of the baby nurse any longer, which was very hard, because that was my passion. That's kind of what it all started. But it was in some ways kind of like as my sacrifice, if you could kind of call it that way, uh, in order for the business to be growing. The next kind of a big chapter was, I was teaching a lot of the classes, and realizing, okay, I cannot be like running the business all day and after that teach a class, in the evening for expecting parents. And so realizing, okay, again, I cannot do it all. So hiring, the right educators, the right instructors. And so I had to kind of step away from the kind of the teaching role as well. And all of a sudden, my role was really kind of being the president of the company, making sure that, coordinating with marketing, building up website, coordinating all the, still coordinating, hiring, terminating, the curriculum building. And just really a lot of it was listening to our clients, what they are wanting more of, or, being attuned with the market, what's missing. And back then too, I do have to say that I feel like we kind of really pioneered the industry because there was really nothing, even like for us to get an insurance, business insurance, liability insurance, like they didn't know what to do with us. They are like, okay, well, you are yoga studio, but not only yoga studio, you are massage, department or massage business, but you are more than that. You are educational facility, but you are more than that. You are childcare, placement, but you are more than that. And so that was very interesting. They actually are insurance brokers. They actually had to send it to Lloyd's of London because they are like, we don't know how to categorize this business, or even like different directories. Like, well, we are not pregnancy healthcare facility, so what are we? And so so that would be even like back then, like categorizing ourselves within the different directories was very interesting. And so over the years, I start kind of realizing, and for business to succeed, I had to be working on the business rather than in the business, and those were kind of various challenges too, because I love what I do, and I love being with clients, and I like and I love really the day-to-day operation. But in order for me to really grow the business, I cannot be completely in it at all times. And of course, our business is 7 days a week. We are open 7 days a week and been open 7 days a week for many years. And babies are born on Saturdays and Sundays too, or 10 o'clock at night, or
Or
4 o'clock
three.
in the morning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what I find really interesting and fascinating was that you didn't just start out with one lane, of being, just fulfilling the baby nurse role or the night nurse or whatever it was when parents came home, but you started with, as you mentioned, physical therapy, massage classes for families as they get ready to have a kid, and I'm sure lactation classes and all that sort of stuff. It was just you put together these several different business lines from the get-go, from the very beginning. What made you so ambitious to really have, because you have to staff those businesses too. You need a physical therapist, you need massage, it's different people. Why did you bite off all those businesses at once?
Well, I mean, that was the concept.
Yeah.
I start seeing, yes, I can, refer a client to, lactation support somewhere else. But at that point, like I'm putting my name, my reputation on the line for this business. I don't really know how well they will do or not. And so that was kind of one of the triggers, kind of the trust, who I can trust. Plus, there
Hmm.
were really not other services or businesses like there. So I mean, there was like a nanny agency, which maybe kind of the first couple of years we did not have nanny placement. But after, referring my clients out and them coming back to us like, well, we want the quality of the service you are delivering.
Hmm.
And so that was one of the last, I guess, services we added kind of the early on. But it was really just kind of, that's what the Motherhood Center was really. It's all the essential services all under one roof. And for that too, like clients having the experience um, that they can just come to one place. Everybody is kind of familiar. All of our team can kind of help support the client from the different angles. And so that really was kind of the Motherhood Center, as a
Right.
concept.
So
Mhm.
you really wanted to control too the outcomes, and in your book, what comes across really clearly is the customer. experience is the most important thing. I mean, I think you mentioned it several times.
Right.
So is clearly mission driven to help the families and the babies, obviously, but it also has to be a successful business. Let's face it. How have you balanced serving families and their children with building a financially sustainable company? Um, you have to make money at the end of the day, and
Right.
you're very altruistic and very customer focused. So, how did you think about pricing and all the things that really drive profitability in a business like that?
Yeah, I mean, the pricing been always kind of interesting because, we do have um, the customer service, the delivery, the high quality of the service and essentially kind of the product is something I would never wanted to kind of go down on. And so we would been always kind of priced moderately, well, to be able to justify, having the space and having, justifying the marketing and obviously,
Mhm.
fair, good pay to all of our team members. But also some of the services might be a little bit, I would call it kind of like a loss leader, or kind of like a lead in, and so, for example, our exercise programs, our prenatal yoga or prenatal fitness classes are very much comparable with any other fitness or yoga studio pricing, And so, of course, with that, clients come in for our, yoga and prenatal yoga, prenatal fitness. And after that, they get introduced to our massages. And after that, they are being introduced to our educational classes, which are definitely priced much higher than like a hospital class. But if you wanted to have a more of an intimate setting and you wanted to be in the camaraderie of other, expecting like-minded parents, having snacks and, sparkling waters and all of that, provided to you during the class, you have the option now to go to the Motherhood Center and pay more, but also are going to probably receive a little bit more, and so some of the services, would be priced higher, or our childcare services, I would say we are kind of the top of the line, of pricing, maybe kind of structure, maybe for Houston, but at the same time, the service we are delivering to our clients, matching that, clients, are very satisfied with the overall service we provide, and they are willing to pay the price for that. So yeah, so it's been kind of a interesting, just kind of a pricing because the way I grew up, it's there was not even kind of like I mean, there was one prize which was directed, and there was not kind of anything else. So even kind of the market, or kind of understanding that there are different pricing markets, that was very, very new to me. And that would be my husband would be like, well, you need to charge more. It's like, I'm like, oh, but I'm like, oh, but it's, can they, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to bite the bullet and we are going to increase price. And, clients did not even blink because
Yeah.
they want the best for their pregnancies and their children.
Yeah, I'm very interesting to see that those early exercise classes and yoga, really getting people to get a taste of your center, get exposed to all the services, they're priced so that they'll feel very comfortable coming in, comparably priced to the competition. And then once you get them into the ecosystem, you're able to really charge more and really get the returns that you need. But you also mentioned that in your experience, you had some hard times, and you had difficult periods. You talked about borrowing money to keep the business alive. You talked about litigating with a former partner, which it was devastating psychologically as well. And then the constant responsibility, making payroll while providing this great service. So, what did those experiences teach you about building a resilient company? Because I know it wasn't, no entrepreneurial journey is without its bumps. So,
Sure. No, I mean, there were days, of course, all the credit cards or weeks or months, all the credit cards are maxed out, and, borrowing money from family members, and of course, so much of my like reliance, because I mean, clearly I couldn't rely on any of my family back home in Czech, like a financial support or really any kind of a guidance.
Yeah.
And for that matter, I didn't even want to burden them or concern them that maybe things are not going as well as I hope, because there was not much what they could do for me except like, listening to me crying on the phone, and like, what are we supposed to do now with that information? So kind of preserving, them not kind of being pulled into what they couldn't really control or do much about it. But yeah, I mean, definitely, there were definitely some really hard days, hard times, even with COVID. I mean, the business essentially, big parts of the business were shutting down, and so all of a sudden, I had the decision to make. What are we wanted to not only survive, but we wanted to thrive. We didn't know how long the pandemic is going to take place. And so it was me getting on the phone and calling my team. And it's like, can you take a pay cut? Can you take a salary cut? And so I was, grateful that we had really a great team. And they were willing to, take pay cuts. I'm like, I'm going to repay you, but for us to kind of pull through all of this is kind of what we need to do. And if you cannot, I completely understand. And of course, there were some, government kind of a support programs. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
you need to go on that, go on that. Of course, they couldn't do it, while working as well. So that was kind of a big decision for them as well. Um, but yeah, definitely, I think like every entrepreneur, it's uh, there are these hard days, hard nights, hard weeks, sometimes hard months. For me, I feel like after 26 years in business, there's still not a one day that I'm not excited to go to work, and work on the business or in the business. And so I'm very grateful to have that, because that would be very hard, going through all these different struggles, and kind of not feeling like, am I really committed? Is this the right thing? Or, so yeah, so I'm grateful for that. And I don't know where that is coming from. Maybe just because, I'm passionate for what we do. And so that passion just kind of trumps everything else, and willing to take the sacrifices
Yeah. Well,
sometimes
it's
to
so
make it
great when
happen.
your interest and your passion aligns with your business, so that you still have that drive to get out of bed in the morning, and attack the business and get into it. And of course there is a need, and it sounds like you've figured out the profitability aspect of it. So now that you're creating profits, which gets me to my next point, which is, when you look back, what decisions do you think made the biggest difference in allowing the business not to just survive, but to endure and position you for what my next question will be, which is, what does the future look like? So, what do you think, enabled you to get to this point?
Um, kind of the word perseverance comes to my mind. I think uh, it's such a meaningful business, and it's so important business, and I really feel like we are impacting not only one person's life, we are impacting families' lives, the family's future. I feel like by building this really kind of a strong foundation for these families, the reward is already there. I mean, obviously, financial reward is good and important, but just being really seeing these families, how grateful they are, and they are able to blossom, and they are able to do better or make better decisions. Even now we have families which are our clients, which are actually now on the next generation. So like the young moms back then, now they are in our grandparents' refresher classes, and those babies back then are, clients themselves in our classes. And so there's like an incredible, like a satisfaction and reward. And so those are kind of the drives. And ultimately, I feel every city should have Motherhood Center, in the city, and even just in Czech Republic. I'm seeing it now. because kind of that village concept, the village atmosphere is really that's kind of dissolving as well. Like my, cousin who lives in Prague, it's a 4 or 5 hour drive to his family home, and so it's like, and his parents are working, so they are not able to kind of support him the way, so he's now needing to seek and pay for services, which normally kind of the village provided or the family provided. And so yeah, so it's, I love entrepreneurship. I love business, and I love the pregnancy, motherhood, fatherhood, baby industry. And so, and I think for me, I'm Gemini, and so I kind of like to work on
Mhm.
multiple projects, at the same time, and it's just kind of like fits me, fits my personality, but also, finding time and ways to decompress, to just kind of sit still, because that's kind of where you really kind of get better attuned, maybe not only with your clients, but it's really what aligns with you. Because I mean, it's great to have the drive and kind of keep pushing yourself. And I've been, over the years, I've been in situations that, I mean, I was in a hospital bed, kind of for more of a like a diagnostic matter, but I was realizing it's like, okay, I did not have to be here. You know, I I pushed myself so hard that my health is now being affected. And so I think over the years, just being able to balance it all, and I mean, money is important, but also not to the point that it's going to kind of affect you and your health, and you are not going to be able to be good for the business. So, but I think I kind of like lost your initial question, but this is kind of
No,
like what
no,
what
no,
came
no,
to
you
me.
didn't. You didn't. And in fact, you know, just having taken a vacation and gone fishing myself, can I go and step away from the business and enjoy life and decompress and recharge? And it sounds
Mhm.
like you had to make that decision too, which is a very important part of being an entrepreneur is the ability to back away and knowing that your team can carry the business and you can take that time off. And that's sounds like you had to learn that lesson. But looking ahead, I was thinking the next chapter, and you said you wish every city had a motherhood center because you think it's so important for the reasons you cite. But is that something? What excites you most as you sit on this business that's working well in Houston? What excites you most about the next 5 to 10 years, and what do you want your legacy to look like? Are you going to try to take advantage of those geographic opportunities to expand, or tell us a little bit about what you're thinking?
Sure. I mean, yes, and I've been wanting to have, multiple motherhood centers, for last 20 years,
Hmm.
and really globally, because I mean, there is a need really globally for motherhood centers. And so, yes, I would like to, as I'm having a little bit more opportunity to truly work on the business. I just recently retitled myself from president to CEO, and that really kind of helped me to shift my mind in ways. I'm going to be kind of operating in the upcoming years. I do have a really great team, and which allows me to be able to be away for a few weeks on vacation. So I'm very grateful to my team, and that was very important, because there were definitely times over the years where I thought I can step away, and the team just was not strong enough to support it, and so I had to be kind of pulled back. So yeah, so for the next really 5 years, I would like to kind of explore the opportunities of how to replicate what we created here, and kind of how to expand to other cities. Plus, the world, or the kind of the industry is so much more ready, where I don't have to be educating people about the importance, because now we are being seeked out. It's like we wanted to incorporate, some of your services, and it could be from, employers looking for more kind of like a family benefits to their employees, to obviously, a lot of the VC companies and, all of that, like they are kind of, seeking our services and our type of a business. So the market is very different than maybe even 10 years ago. And of course, over 2 decades ago. So I'm very excited and still not losing kind of the touch with the day-to-day kind of operation, but now we have the things in place that I'm able to kind of stay connected and keep up, but also now being able to work on the business better.
Yeah. I mean, that brings up three immediate questions, which is, the paths that you have before you, you could go and become a benefit for employers, and they could refer, their employees into you and have it serve as a benefit, which I think could possibly explode your growth even further. And then there's the investment aspect of somebody saying, geez, we'd like to own you, and then take this and clone it across probably geographies and several locations.
Mhm.
And then the third thing that comes up as I listen to you is, love the fact that you were able to elevate yourself to a CEO role and take away that operational responsibility and hand it to your team. Did you hire a COO to make that transition, or was the team just strong enough so that you could just shift up?
Yeah, so I think our team is strong enough, but in the near future, we will probably need to be doing some transitions. I have a director of operations and kind of managers for the different divisions,
Hmm.
and so they are all kind of working together. And of course, we have marketing team and all of that, and all the educators and instructors. So the team as a whole is pretty large. Um, and because we do so many different things, but yeah, but the not unable to answer completely yet, but yes,
Yes,
in
understand.
the upcoming months, I'm excited for some evolutions. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Interesting. And and now in your new role, you have to evaluate, what is the best path? Is it to pursue that employer, idea and market to that, or maybe take outside money, or um,
Mhm.
and think about that. So I love that. Love that you have multiple avenues that you can think about and decide what you want to do. Well, great, Gabriella. I really appreciate your time today, and I love there's so many interesting things, and I love how you've transitioned from, I guess, communist to capitalist and entrepreneur, and been able to go back to your country and see that same sort of blossoming, as you say, in your own home country, which must be very gratifying too, which is great. So I think we'll leave it there. And again, thank you for coming on. And to the audience, until next time, we'll see you on the entrepreneur's journey.
Thank you.